Hello, mythical creature lovers. Well, this week we're going to talk about hidden little people who only appear at certain times. I've got a hint for you in the background. Who do you think we're talking about? Well, come along with me and we'll check it out. If you guessed elves and fairies, you're right. Today we're going to be talking about them. You may not have thought that they would look like this, but actually sometimes they do look like that. Elves in Northern Europe um, kind of had a different look to them. They were sometimes thought of as mischievous and harmful. They had those pointy ears, and sometimes they weren't quite so kind. In England and Germany, they were sometimes thought of as if you had kind of a stitch in your side, if you had a pain in your side, they thought that sometimes it's because an elf threw a rock at you in your sleep. That's kind of a funny story, isn't it? And this is another picture right here. I'll move it over. This is from France. They're called Les Corrigans. And these dwarves were beings that were light, and they showed them as true hideous form. They lived in the springs near ancient stones and appeared dancing in circles at dusk. I know that picture is a little hard to see. And of course, then we have the traditional gnomes. You've probably seen those little statues of gnomes that were seen, and those were little hidden folks, and they were thought of as being rather mischievous too. Some were called dwarves. Let me see if I can move my picture. And dwarves come from Northern Europe. You can see him working away. The dwarves in ancient myths were small and ugly and deformed creatures that lived in caves under the ground. And they were excellent metal workers. So they pounded out different things in metal. And they had similar characteristics as the gnomes and the north dwarfs in uh, Europe. Now here's another interesting one over here. Look at how different these look. And these over here, let me get to this picture over here. We're going to talk a little bit later in March. So I'm going to skip over those. Those are leprechauns because those are also little people, but we're going to save those until we get to March. So I'm skipping right over that. And I'm going down here to this picture here because we have dwarfs, elves come in two different categories. And probably a lot of you know about this if you have any interest at all in the Tolkien stories, because J.R.R. Tolkien, some people say it Tolkien, of course, was the master of writing about different elves. And there's light elves and dark elves. And so here we have a picture of the light elves. And in Norse mythology, light elves had magical powers and lived in Alfheim, a world between heaven and earth, where the dark elves lived under the ground. And the light elves were, of course, the ones that were very light and pale skinned, and the ones that lived underground. And we're going to show you, I'm showing you a video that talk about this more. But the ones that lived under the ground were very dark skinned, and they were greedy and unruly. So they were quite a different character than the ones that were the light elves, as you can imagine. So here's a picture of the light elves dancing around a tree here. Then this is quite a different little character that's sort of like an elf character. Oh, let me move this. I have to move some of my things out of the way here to get to this little guy here. Let me see if you can, sorry about this. Move this back out of the way here. There he is, the Huldufólk from Iceland. And this is the hidden people that are found throughout Scandinavian mythology. They're usually mild-mannered. However, terrible things apparently happen to those who deliberately damaged the large boulders in which they lived. We'll hear a little bit more about that in the video that I showed you. But isn't he a funny little folk? A funny little character there. I like him a lot. Interesting little picture there. So, of course, the most famous elves that you have seen, no doubt, are the ones that are associated with this time of year, right? And we think of that one, of course, as the one that helps out Santa Claus. But we also know of other elves that were known to help out people. And they did come and they were hidden usually. And they were known to help people if people would give them things in return, or if it would help them in some way to better themselves. Like, I'm going to share with you a story that you may know about called The Elves and the Shoemaker. And there is kind of a payback for them if they would help people. So that is part of the tradition too of elves and how they would be helped out if they helped people. So there's sort of a tradition with that too. So what I'm going to share with you today then is I'm going to share with you a fun story that is told about the elves and the shoemaker, which you may have heard before, but I think you'll enjoy listening to it again. And then I'm going to share with you someone telling about the history of elves and fairies. And then I'm going to share with you a fun project that you can do about making a 3D sort of open up art project where you can have elves, kind of a cartoon version of Christmas elves, where you can stack and open them. And it's from Art Hub, and I think you'll really enjoy that. You can make that art project. So I hope you have a lot of fun with that, that you'll learn some more about the history of elves. You will be able to hear a story about a traditional story, The Elves and the Shoemaker, that has been passed down from generation to generation. And then if you want, you can do a cartoon version of Christmas elves and be able to open it up and have a kind of a 3D version of elves stacked on top of each other. So I hope you enjoy that this week and have fun with it. And if you do the art project, I hope you will share it and post it, and we would all enjoy seeing it together. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next week. Thanks for sharing all of your projects. I always enjoy seeing them. Okay, bye-bye.